Rain lashed against the glass walls of the Sterling Corporation headquarters, streaking the view of the city into a blur of lights and shadows. Inside, CEO Meredith Sterling stood in her office, her jaw tight, eyes fixed on a single notification flashing across her screen: incident report, unauthorized personnel in restricted area. It was nearly midnight. Most of her employees were gone, yet the janitor, an older man named Eli Turner, was still somewhere in the building. Security footage showed him crouched beside her daughter, Lila, in the dimly lit lobby. And in his hand, a flashlight. He was shining it directly at her little girl's face. The rage that built inside Meredith came from more than just what she saw, it came from fear. Lila, her 9-year-old daughter, was blind. And after years of shielding her from pity, misunderstanding, and cruelty, Meredith had zero tolerance for anyone who crossed a line. Within minutes, Eli was called upstairs. The old janitor stood before her desk, rain dripping from his coat, his eyes humble yet steady. "Miss Sterling, I can explain," he began softly. "No," she snapped. "You don't get to explain shining a light at my daughter's eyes like some kind of cruel joke." Her voice cracked, but only slightly. She had learned long ago that showing weakness gave people permission to hurt her more. "You're fired." Effective immediately. Eli didn't protest. He only nodded, looked toward the closed office door as if imagining Lila behind it, and whispered, "I'm sorry. I never meant harm." Then he left, his slow footsteps echoing down the hall. Meredith's hands trembled as she shut her laptop. She told herself it was the right thing. She had to protect her daughter, always. But that night, long after Lila fell asleep beside her music box, Meredith couldn't shake the image of Eli's face. There was no malice there. Only, something she couldn't name. The next morning, Lila woke up smiling. That alone was unusual. "Mommy, the lights were dancing last night," she said dreamily over breakfast. Meredith froze mid-sip of her coffee. "What lights, baby?" "The warm ones," Lila said, her voice full of wonder. "I saw them. Just for a moment. It was like sunshine behind my eyes." Her mother's heart squeezed. Saw them? For years, doctors had told her there was no chance. Lila's optic nerves were severely damaged. Vision was impossible. Yet, she spoke with such certainty. Meredith brushed it off as imagination, the way children dream vividly. Still, something in Lila's tone, it didn't sound like pretending. 2 days later, Eli returned. Not through the main lobby, but to the side door of the building where deliveries came in. He held a small folded paper in his calloused hands and gave it to the security guard. "Please," he said, "could you give this to Ms. Sterling or her assistant? I won't bother anyone else." The guard, half suspicious, half sympathetic, agreed. The note reached Meredith within the hour. It said only one line. "Please let me show you what your daughter saw." Against her better judgment, Meredith felt a strange pull. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe, deep down, it was hope. That evening, she agreed to meet Eli at the building's rooftop garden after hours. When she arrived, Eli stood beside a small table with a set of strange glass prisms and mirrors, a few handheld lights, and what looked like old medical equipment. "I used to be an engineer," he said quietly, "before my wife got sick. I've studied light therapy for years. Not the kind people talk about for mood or skin treatments, something different. I've been experimenting with resonant frequency patterns. When I saw your daughter's eyes, I noticed something I've only seen once before." Meredith frowned, arms crossed. "You think you can cure blindness with flashlights?" He shook his head. "No, ma'am. But I think your daughter's eyes reacted. Even damaged nerves sometimes retain dormant sensitivity. I didn't mean to frighten her. I was testing a reflection pattern, and when the beam hit her eyes, she smiled. She said she could feel color. Meredith blinked, remembering Lila's words. The lights were dancing. Eli continued, his voice trembling slightly. Sometimes, the world gives us cracks in what we believe is impossible. If you let me try, carefully, safely, I might help her see light again. Even just a glimmer. The logical, business-trained side of Meredith wanted to dismiss him. But the mother, the exhausted, heart-hungry mother, hesitated. She saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen in anyone else's since Lila's diagnosis, hope without agenda. That weekend, she allowed Eli to visit their home. Lila greeted him like an old friend, her face lighting up when she heard his voice. "Hi, Mr. Eli. You smell like rain again." He chuckled softly. "Guess I bring the weather with me." They set up a small station by the window. Eli arranged the mirrors, adjusted the angles, and began shining gentle beams, golden, soft, across the room. Lila sat perfectly still, her face tilted toward the light. At first, nothing. Then, suddenly, her lips parted. "It's warm," she whispered. "It feels like yellow." Tears filled Meredith's eyes. She said yellow. For weeks, they continued quietly, away from doctors and reporters. Slowly, Lila began describing faint patterns, shadows, glows, even shapes. She couldn't see in the normal sense, but something inside her was awakening. One night, after Lila fell asleep, Meredith sat beside Eli on the porch. "Why do this for us?" she asked softly. "You don't even know us." Eli stared out at the dark street. "I had a daughter once," he said. "She lost her sight after an accident. I spent years trying to help her, but I ran out of time. She passed before I ever found a way. When I saw Lila, I saw a second chance to do right by someone." Meredith's throat tightened. The man she'd fired, the man she'd accused, had carried his own pain quietly beneath the uniform she never looked twice at. But word got out. A medical consultant from Lila's school overheard her talking about colors dancing, and soon reporters wanted answers. The story of the CEO's blind daughter who saw light again exploded across the internet. Doctors, specialists, and skeptics flooded in. Some called Eli a miracle worker, others a fraud. One afternoon, during a televised demonstration, Lila was asked to identify shapes of light on a projection wall. She hesitated, trembling under the cameras. Then she pointed exactly where the light changed color. The room fell silent. A doctor muttered, "Impossible." Meredith looked at Eli across the room. His eyes glistened, not with pride, but peace. He had proven what he needed to. A few days later, Eli collapsed in the janitor's closet at work. By the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. A worn photo of a young girl, folded from age, was in his pocket. At the funeral, Lila placed a yellow rose on his coffin. "He said yellow feels like sunshine," she whispered. "Now he can see it for real." Meredith knelt beside her, tears streaming. "He gave us light, baby. Even when the world said there was none." In the months that followed, Lila's partial light sensitivity continued to improve. Not full sight, but enough to see silhouettes, enough to chase the glow of the morning sun. Every time she opened her eyes, she smiled and said, "Hi, Mr. Eli." Meredith never replaced the janitor position at her company. Instead, she renamed the rooftop garden Eli's Light, dedicating it to those who worked quietly, unseen, yet changed lives in ways no title ever could. And on stormy nights, when the city blurred into streaks of gold and gray, she'd stand by the glass walls of her office, no longer hardened, no longer afraid, and whisper into the dark, "Thank you for seeing what no one else could."